Good evening. Welcome to Works in Process. I think I'm losing my voice, but it's great to welcome you all back. And what better way to do that than to welcome back Peter Boal and Pacific Northwest Ballet, the beautiful dancers. It's going to be a great evening, and Peter is going to lead the discussion.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to say first off that Pacific Northwest Ballet is honored to once again be a part of the Works in Process series. I'd also like to express my appreciation to the George Balanchine Trust for agreeing to have Balanchine's ballets excerpted and discussed as part of this program. In the course of this lecture demonstration, we will look at 4 ballets by George Balanchine: Agon, the Four Temperaments, Apollo, and Tchaikovsky Pas de Deux. In each of these ballets, as he did with many of his creations, Mr. Balanchine made revisions to his original choreography after the premiere. In some cases, the choreography is markedly different, and in others, very subtly different. We don't always know the reason why Balanchine made changes, but in some cases we do. Once, the boss told him to. A good reason. In another, filming restructuring to accommodate camera angles caused some changes. In many cases, the move to a new space, like the move from City Center to the New York State Theater, added dimension to the ballets, and Balanchine restructured accordingly. The arrival of a new cast was also cause for change. The showstopper Tchaikovsky Pas de Deux was perhaps the most revised, more than any other piece, with the intention of showing an individual's particular technical strength and their bravura moments. We'll close with an action-packed film of the Pas de Deux with some familiar faces showing off a bit, and then our dancers will aim to match the excitement for you on the stage. Before we look at excerpts and before I introduce the dancers, I want to preface this lecture with how I came to this topic. As many of you know, I joined the New York City Ballet as an apprentice in January of 1983. I received a full corps contract on April 30th, which was the day that Balanchine died. I was actually brought to the ballet by my family, and one of the reasons that I kept dancing was specifically to work with Balanchine. I danced for the New York City Ballet for 22 and a half years, and though I knew the canon of Balanchine's works as well as anyone during those years, it was as a dancer learning from a ballet master, not direct contact with a choreographer. I don't come to this topic with the version that Mr. Balanchine taught me, or choreographed on me, or even on the guy next to me. My only work in the studio with Balanchine was limited to rehearsals for Nutcracker and for School of American Ballet Workshop, and also I was a frog in L'Enfant et les Sortilèges. A heady resume, I'm sure. I learned his ballets from Peter Martins, Ebe Anderson, Bart Cook, Helgi Thomasson, Jerome Robbins, Richard Tanner, Sean Lavery, John Terrace, Suzanne Farrell, Sarah Leland, Patricia McBride, and Rosemary Dunleavy. I also participated in several archival projects through the George Balanchine Trust with Allegra Kent, Melissa Hayden, Maria Tallchief, Violette Verdi, and Conrad Ludlow. My first awareness of revisions to Balanchine's choreography came when I traveled to France to dance with the Ballet du Nord in 1988, where I first danced Melancholic. I learned the Four Temperaments from the artistic staff of the Ballet du Nord. It was originally staged for the company by Balanchine repetiteur Patricia Neary. I was instantly aware of how different the staging was from the one that I had known at the New York City Ballet. When I performed Melancholic with the Mariinsky Ballet in 2004, I had to learn a completely different finale than the one that I had performed with the New York City Ballet, and different from the one that I performed with the Ballet du Nord. And when I arrived in Seattle 8 years ago, I was also struck by the differences in stagings of the Four Temperaments and Agon between Pacific Northwest Ballet and New York City Ballet. All legitimate versions of Balanchine choreography, all faithfully reconstructed, but different choreography nonetheless. These differences highlighted Balanchine's ability to change his works and how commonly he revised his original choreography. Pacific Northwest Ballet is somewhat unique in that I come in with perspectives of the later years of Balanchine's work, and Francia Russell is an authority on a different era. Francia Russell brought over 25 Balanchine works into the P&B repertory during her tenure as co-artistic director of the company, and she continues to be the primary stager of our Balanchine repertoire. Francia not only danced for Mr. Balanchine, having been a member of the original cast of Agon, among many other roles, but also stood by his side as ballet master for years. Francia stages Balanchine ballets not only for the Pacific Northwest Ballet, but around the globe as a repetiteur for the Trust. When PNB performs at City Center this coming February, we will perform Francia's staging of Concerto Barocco and Agon alongside my staging of Apollo. I come to this topic not as a historian or as an authority on alterations made by Balanchine to his work, but rather as a former dancer, whoops, and a current artistic director and stager of Balanchine ballets. In the course of this lecture, I draw from writings by Robert Greskovic, Arlene Croce, Nancy Reynolds, Bernard Taper, Robert Garris, and John Gruen. As we take a look at Apollo and the many changes to this masterpiece over its 50 years under the choreographer's eye, a quote by Balanchine from Bernard Taper's masterful biography sets the tone quite well. In the wake of a small uproar over the omission of the birth scene from Apollo and a restructuring of the apotheosis along with the removal of the staircase that had come to represent Mount Parnassus, Balanchine offered this explanation. And I suspect if he could talk about this lecture I'm giving, he'd say the same thing. Balanchine said, "I don't have to explain why I change things. I can do with my ballets whatever I want. They are mine, I made them, and I can change them if I want to." We start with Apollo, which premiered on June 12, 1928 in Paris as a commission for Serge Diaghilev's Ballet Russe. The original cast of muses included Alicia Nikitina, Lubov Chernysheva, Filia Dubrovska, centered around Serge Lafar as Apollo. Composer Igor Stravinsky conducted the premiere. The effect on the audience, according to Taper, was profound. One critic leaving after Apollo so as not to mar the loveliness of the premiere with the rest of the program. Diaghilev was mostly elated, coming backstage to kiss Lafar's leg. He also noted on the occasion that this was only the second time that he had kissed a dancer's leg, the first being Nijinsky's after the premiere of Le Sacre du Printemps. But Diaghilev apparently was not entirely pleased with the 24-year-old's choreography, ordering Balanchine to cut Terpsichore's variation for the second performance, citing that it was boring. Balanchine did as he was told, and the variation was cut, but he suggested that the fault lay with the dancer, Alicia Nikitina, not his choreography. Balanchine's choice for Terpsichore was Alexandra Danilova. This was not the choice of Ballet Russe patron Lord Rothermere. Lord Rothermere had bestowed a Rolls-Royce on Alicia Nikitina and wanted her as Terpsichore on opening night. I'm so glad the world doesn't work like this anymore. Later that year, the patronage was gone. Nikitina was out of favor and perhaps out of gas, and Danilova was Terpsichore with a completely re-choreographed variation. The first of many revisions to Apollo had taken place within days of the premiere. Balanchine speaks candidly of the effect of Stravinsky's score for Apollo, calling it, quote, "a turning point in my life, a revelation. It seemed to tell me that I could dare not to use everything, that I too could eliminate." If we look at Apollo over the 50-year period from the premiere until a revival for Mikhail Baryshnikov in 1978, we see this lesson repeated time and time again with revisions to the title, score, sets, costumes, cast, and choreography. Let's look at a few images over the course of the ballet's history. The original Mount Parnassus with the looming chariot and horses. I love the way one muse didn't show up for the photo shoot. And it looks like Ethel Mertz designed these wigs. The original title was Apollon Musaget, and this was changed to Apollo Musageta, and then Apollo, leader of the Muses, and eventually just Apollo. The original scenery and costumes were by André Beauchamp, Diaghilev's choice, and they were quickly discarded in favor of new designs, with Coco Chanel doing the new costumes. Various other changes were used over the years, each more pared down than the previous one. Again, think of Stravinsky's inspiration. An attempt at a realistic depiction of Mount Parnassus was eventually replaced with a simple black staircase seen in profile. And like the Four Temperaments, elaborate costumes were traded for simple practice clothes, allowing choreography to exist unhampered by costumes. In 1978, Balanchine eliminated the entire birth scene, thereby reducing the cast by 3. He scrapped the stairs and reconfigured the ending, removing the dancer's ascent to the mountaintop and replacing it with what's known as the sunburst pose. A film of Jacques d'Amboise from 1960 shows us parts of the eliminated first scene. Also, in the 1978 revision of Apollo, Apollo's first variation was cut. Balanchine restored the solo soon after for Mikhail Baryshnikov's subsequent performances. I'm going to ask the dancers to come out in a minute. Seth Orza and I will take a look at the first solo with accompaniment by Christina Siemens. And first I'll have all 6 come out so that I can introduce them to you. There they are. So we have Matthew Renko and Seth Orza and Benjamin Griffiths, Carla Körbes, Lesley Rausch, and Maria Chapman. So thank you, guys. So Seth and I are going to look at the first solo, and the version that Seth has done that I have staged in Pacific Northwest Ballet starts with the curtain going up, as you commonly see it today, and there stands Apollo with his lute, or sometimes referred to as the lyre. One thing to know is that the lyre is bestowed upon Apollo in the birth scene by, these two were known as the goddesses, and later they were known as the handmaidens, and later they were cut. So it's kind of a downward trajectory for them. But they introduce the lute, they place it in front of him. He's so newborn that he can't hold it, and they take his hands and they teach him slowly how to play it. You can see the inspiration come in his face. One of the challenges of this version is to show that inspiration from the very start with the lyre, with the lute in hand. So let's take a look at Seth in the first part of the first solo. Thank you, Seth. That was great. Now, you'll see a difference when Apollo puts down the lute, and he has to take those first steps, and we saw Jacques d'Amboise struggling with those first steps, unable to walk in the beating. It's a bit, if you likened it to a newborn colt. And the legs are stunning, but the animal hasn't figured out how to use them. And the first steps, why don't you go even slower than we usually do? And we see the pique, and we see the collapse, and the leg doesn't work. And the second one, collapse. But there's a determination to conquer. And with each one, we're really repeating the same step 8 times, but you feel the confidence grow, the authority in the face, and the feeling of the use of the legs. That's right. Almost an easier role to play with the birth, more pressure to demonstrate this development of character with the limited time. But let's take a look at Seth from once we put the lute down in the second half. Thank you, Seth. I'll have Carla Körbes come out on stage. I had the good fortune of dancing Apollo for many, many years. One day I counted, I danced with 15 different terpsichores, ranging from Patricia McBride, Heather Watts at New York City Ballet. I also had the good fortune of traveling to Brazil to dance with a 14-year-old who was terpsichore, and her name was Carla Körbes. So we'll look at this solo. We're assuming from the earliest footage that we have that this is based very closely on the version that Balanchine re-choreographed for Alexandra Danilova. There are a few changes, though. As I looked at a wonderful video, the D'Amboise video, with Diana Adams doing this role, and there were some changes in that. One of the steps where terpsichore seems to lose her balance and recover it, which Apollo, sitting on the stool, relates to and finds this strong connection with terpsichore. But the way that it was done by Diana Adams was from point to point, 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 and back down. Do one more time for us. Point, 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 and down. Now look at how it's done more commonly today. Point, flat, 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 point, down. And one more time. It's a small difference, but you can see how one conveys more imbalance and covers more space. Perhaps in a larger theater, larger stage, we don't know. And another difference that we looked at, there was the manège, the first manège. Why don't you show how Diana Adams did it to start? Yes, a nice grand jeté. And the arms, which oftentimes are done in a first arabesque, on the Adams tape, they were done with more of the chest leading and less of the hand leading. So we kind of did that because we loved it. One of the other things, different versions were done for different dancers. Suzanne Farrell often did this version with the développé. the same manege we just showed you, but done without the jump, and Suzanne Farrell's long legs ascending and descending. So, one of the things that's been different too from the Diana Adams version, there's a final circle, and we'll do that with Christina, but it's commonly done in 3 sets of 6. Why don't we look at that first, 3 sets of 6. Wait, sorry, we'll start one more time. So 4 for nothing. 6, good. And the earlier version looked like this. Let's do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. A very subtle change, but nonetheless a change. And I'm not sure what it was that propelled Balanchine to make this change, but we had another, didn't we? Or is that everything? They just want to see you do the variation, so so let's take a look at the entire variation. We're going to take a look at the Apollo Pas de Deux as well, with Apollo and Terpsichore. I had the privilege of watching a coaching session with Maria Chapman on film with 2 dancers about the Pas de Deux. And interestingly, from Maria Chapman's perspective, very consistent choreography from what we see today and what she had done. Speaking with somebody who had also worked with Marie-Jean on the Pas de Deux, she was an early cast of Terpsichore. There were a few small differences. Maybe if I can get Carla and Seth back out here, we can take a look at those. One of them is there's a lift that sort of fans in beautiful scallops going up stage. And the way that it's done commonly today, Seth will start with, but it used to have his right hand grabbing her right hand and be done like this. Again, a small difference, and we don't know why that change happened. Good, that's fine. Thanks, guys. There's a final lift in the pas de deux as well that you'll see that's a very tricky balancing act with her balancing on the nape of his neck. Didn't used to be as tricky. He used to be completely bent forward. The Apollo did. There's photographs of this with Danilova and Serge Lafar. And most of Terpsichore's upper body was on him, so much lower horizontal lines, but that's been changed as well. The two things Maria Chapman stressed were the awareness of Terpsichore, of Apollo, constantly without looking at him, just looking back and feeling his presence without actually engaging him with the eyes, which I thought was beautiful. And constant hands, constant hands. There was a position of the hands that she wanted throughout that the dancer she was working with developed. So let's take a look at the pas de deux. Thank you. Robert Garris writes in his biography of Balanchine that Balanchine contemplated shelving Apollo after 1972 Stravinsky Festival. Balanchine was often known to quip, "Who wants to see last year's butterflies?" But in 1978, Apollo returned to the stage for Brezhnev, and I'd like to take a look now at the apotheosis and how Balanchine altered it for the 1978 restaging for Brezhnev. Let's take a look at the Jacques d'Amboise film one more time. This is the sunburst pose. These changes caused an outcry from many, and Balanchine defended his decision in an interview with John Gruen, reminding audiences that the beloved staircase was not a part of the original production, that it was merely a substitute for a missing mountain, and that a relief of the chariot had loomed nearby, which nobody seemed to miss. And he now thought that the birth was less interesting and the staircase was somewhat silly, and he was merely removing all of the garbage. He reasoned that Apollo only becomes interesting and remains interesting when the dancing was happening. He said all of his ballets are about the dancing. There's a quote from Balanchine also, "There is no such thing as an accurate historical preservation of a ballet. It changes with every cast. Paintings can be preserved, ballets can't be and shouldn't be. If present-day critics and audiences could actually see Apollo as it was performed in 1928, this is quoting, they would laugh their heads off." Let's take a look at the later and last revision of Apollo with Seth and Carla and Maria and Lesley, and note that as originally dictated by Stravinsky's score, the chariot ride happened twice. I've danced that version with the Suzanne Farrell Ballet, and I'm sure it was an exhausted Apollo that begged for it to be cut. But nonetheless, we're going to start with this chariot ride. You'll see Apollo and what appears like 3 teeming horses, and we'll see it through the end and see if you can see the changes that Balanchine made. We're going to turn our attention now to Melancholic from the Four Temperaments. I'll ask Ben Griffiths to dance Melancholic as staged by Francia Russell for Pacific Northwest Ballet. And know that Francia worked with Richard Rapp, an early cast of Melancholic, and with Balanchine in preparation for this staging of the Four Temperaments. So Ben? Four Temperaments, choreographed in 1946. In the 1970s, it was filmed for a Dance in America series, and for that filming, Balanchine chose to work with Bart Cook. I learned Melancholic from Bart Cook, and then I have in turn taught it to Matthew Renko. We know of changes that Balanchine made in the finale of Four Temperaments, and we'll look at those in a minute for the staging. But it seems that there were changes made to Melancholic as well, perhaps inspired by Cook's unique movement quality. You may not see these changes at first. Compare them in your mind to what you just saw Ben do. And then I'll give Matt a short rest after he dances the solo, and then we're going to look at most of the solo side by side so that you can see those changes more clearly. Okay, Matt? Good. Well, Matt catches his breath in the wings. You'll notice right from the start that Ben started on stage when the music started, and Matt started off stage. There's a certain tension that fills the stage when music is happening and no dancer is there. It's almost like the dancer is late and rushes in. Ben has time to find his equilibrium before the releve arabesque. Matt doesn't. He lands and goes right into the releve arabesque. You'll notice that Ben's angles with his elbows are a much softer line in places, and Matt's are like daggers cutting into his side with much sharper, more abrupt movements. In general, there's more of a softness, I believe, to Ben's movements and more of a forcefulness to Matt's. And also along you'll see how similar the steps are and the spacing is when the two dance side by side, but how different the emphasis is and how different the timings are. So, Matt, how are you doing? Okay. All right, well, let's see the two of them side by side. We'll stop there. Good. Thank you, guys. You can see the differences, and they're so subtle, but they're constant throughout as well. We're now going to look at the changes that Balanchine made to the finale of Four Temperaments. We're only going to look at a portion of the stage. We're only going to look at the side, the melancholic side and the phlegmatic side. Those of you that know Four Temperaments well, there are four couples dancing in the middle. Their choreography changed as well, but we don't have the resources to show all of that. So just a very sliver of the finale we're looking at here. So we have Ben and Maria representing the 7 dancers on the melancholic side of the stage, and Seth and Carla representing the 5 dancers on the phlegmatic side of the stage. Notice there's sort of a question and answer between the two, and this is the earlier version before the Dance in America filming of the finale. So let's take a look at that. Now we're going to have Seth and Carla dance the later version, same side, and Lesley and Matt will dance the melancholic side. There's one step that was taken out. Carla, maybe I'll have you come out and just show this one step. So these 3 lunges that you just saw, lunge and lunge and lunge, were taken out and replaced with something else, but they came back. Those of you that know Balanchine well, they came back in symphony in 3 movements, and they're in the finale of that. So let's take a look at the other version, and you'll see a symmetry between both sides. Okay. And after the filming, Balanchine elected to keep these changes, and that's how it's commonly done today, though not in France, Russia, or Seattle. Francia remembers several versions of the Gaillard, which is the 2 girls' dance from Agon. As I said, she was in the original cast as a member of the Corps de Ballet and quickly danced the first Pas de Deux. When she danced the Pas de Deux soon after the premiere, but still Balanchine decided to re-choreograph it for her cast. The dance was changed years later again, and Francia decided to call Balanchine and ask him how he would like it staged. Would he like his most recent version? Balanchine responded and suggested that she stage the one that she liked best, and she elected to stage the one that was created for her. So let's take a look at this staging now with Maria and Lesley. Thank you, ladies. Now, rather than doing the entire dance again, the second half is really where the bulk of those changes happen. And so we'll talk them through a bit with the 2 dancers. They also remind me that changing versions is not easy, so remember that. But what we're going to have now is Maria's going to repeat the version that you just saw, and Lesley is going to dance the earlier version. Like I said, Lesley's going to dance the version you just saw, and Maria's going to dance the others. So starting from the échappés, why don't you just walk at your own pace here? So the échappé side, and traveling, and then turning in opposite directions now, and claps are added to the piqués. And then the double pirouette is now taken out for a soutenu. And then the walks that used to happen straight forward now happen on the diagonal with the 2 dancers crossing. And then we can stop there. And let's look at the final pose. Stravinsky had written the final note to be held for 9 consecutive counts. The way that was done was, who's going to do that? Okay, Lesley. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then it was changed to show Stravinsky's counts to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A clear visual representation of Stravinsky's intention. So let's take a look at the second half. And changes were also made to the opening of the pas de trois. Let's look first at how the opening is more commonly danced today with Ben, Lesley, and Maria. Okay. Stop there. Good, thank you. Now we'll see it. We'll see it one more time, and this is how it was originally choreographed and how P&B dances the ballet. Ready? Good, good. We'll stop there. Thank you, guys. Both versions so effective and so distinctly Balanchine, yet completely different. Other changes were made to Agon after the premiere. We're all familiar with the opening image of the 4 male dancers standing facing upstage. In Stravinsky's original notes, it said that the ballet would close in the same manner. But at the premiere, it wasn't so. Balanchine had the dancers facing right and left instead of upstage. Later, as you know, Balanchine changed it back to what Stravinsky's notes originally represented, and all 4 faced upstage. In conclusion, we've looked at a mere sliver of revisions that Balanchine made to a tremendous body of work, over 400 creations all in. Ballets like Le Baiser de la Fée were revisited 3 times over a 40-year period. Re-choreographed versions of Mozartiana, Valse Fantasy, Emeralds, Square Dance, and many other major works were not uncommon in Balanchine's lifetime. There were times when no one could remember the original choreography, and Balanchine started from scratch and filled in the holes. Choreography was heir to Balanchine. Dancers and music were inspiration, and the studio was the canvas. Put a potter before soft clay or give a sculptor a block of marble, and the art and the artist flourish. Balanchine had these tools at his fingertip every day, and the result was wet paint, newly minted design, and more often than not, a masterpiece for us to savor. Balanchine's revisions serve as testimony to the endless creativity and fresh perspective of a genius. As I said at the top of this lecture, Tchaikovsky Pas de Deux is perhaps the most varied in choreography of all Balanchine works, intended as a showstopper. It required each dancer to show their particular strength, allowing for revision from dancer to dancer. The Pas de Deux itself was little changed. When I worked with Conrad Ludlow, he reconstructed the original male variation, which was 3 times as long as the one done today. Wonder why that didn't last. But the real fireworks happen in the coda and the variations. Let's take a look at a film with Jacques d'Amboise, Mikhail Baryshnikov, Melissa Hayden, and Patricia McBride. Now we'll have the chance to see our P&B dancers offer a similar showcase to you. I'd like to thank each of these dancers for their tremendous work on this lecture, and I'd also like to thank Christina Siemens, who you can't see over there, done a wonderful job. So.